David, are you there?
Hello, you.
Hang on, I gotta turn off some music. I was fiddling with music, waiting for you to call me. Of course, to be honest, I'm so technologically challenged, as are you. Um, okay, I'm having another technological challenge at this moment. Bear with me, David. I'll get the music stopped and I'm trying to stop the music. This is funny. I've lost control of my computer.
Do you have a pause button on a video or something like that?
I can't control it. Let me. There, I controlled it. David, no offense, but you might be the last person I'd go to for technological help right after myself. So, what do you want to talk about today? And I have something to talk about too, but you go first.
Well, I think we have stumbled on a brilliant business model in a very ethical sense for Able Danger that's going to take care of its future for the next century, and that relates to the discussion that you and I have already had today. So there's a heading in a post that's gone out, and I notice you've given a title to the show. So why don't you talk about what we've been discussing? Over to you.
I don't even remember what I titled the show, and if I pull up the show, it'll start goofing up the broadcast. And I think I named the show MH370 Next to Kin. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that today is the 40, let me think about this, the 43rd anniversary of my graduating with Chick Burlingame on Annapolis 71 on June 9th of 1971. Chick and I were, and Chick's real name is Francis Charles Burlingame, I think. But everybody calls him Chick, and a lot of people get me confused with him because of the fictitious name of Chips. But while we're on Chips, let's point out that Chips is the official trade magazine of the U.S. Navy intelligence people. And a couple of years ago, the commander of the U.S. Naval War College in Rhode Island was Captain Sherlock. So, David, there's a lot more going on with our effort than you and I realize. And we have a terrific asset down somewhere in the region of New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, or China. So there's someone down there who's really helping us a great deal. And then there's a whole lot of people all around that are helping us to the degree they can. And often that form of help that a lot of people don't recognize as being essential is just putting our name out there or giving a link to other people who are interested in cutting through the confusion and find out what happened to Malaysia 370, what happened on 9/11, what happened to Extortion 17, what happened to Pat Tillman, and the other crimes of not only this misadministration, but during the bankers' wars. And you can correct me all you want, but I'd say that the wars that the United States of America has been involved in since 1837 collectively are banker wars. David, over to you.
Well, I think it precedes that, going back to the War of Independence. But either way, I believe what we've done, perhaps through bumbling or stumbling, and perhaps through some incredible insights that have come from within the team, have created a global reputation as if not that has any kind of understanding of what connects, for example, the alleged attack on the Pentagon by AA Flight 77, allegedly flown by Captain Chick Burlingame, and the attack on the Malaysian government and Malaysian citizens with the flight by Captain Zahari Shah in MH370. And the business model that I think Able Danger can now deploy or adopt with honor and a certain amount of self-congratulation basically relates to the news that the 370 families have formed themselves into a group called Voice 370 and are trying to raise $5 million through crowdsourcing, which I think is a form of appealing over the internet to people to put in a few dollars, or maybe hundreds of dollars, or maybe even thousands of dollars, so that the families can pay a whistleblower crime scene investigation service to find out what happened to their relatives. And very interestingly, I think they don't define who they're going to give the money to. And I think the answer for that, the reason for that is because they don't know. But you see, either we're a problem waiting for a solution, or we're a solution waiting for a problem. But it seems to me that abledanger.net and the team is the perfect partner for a crowdsourced financed initiative by Voice 370. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, I see somebody, and that's not somebody, it's Ginger Cookie, just put up something about Southwest Airlines at Logan. So I'm not going to open that link because I don't have time. Maybe it's not that I'm being rude. I do want to know what it says there. I'm just not going to be getting too difficult technologically with these old fingers of mine. I just put out a request for anybody in the chat room that has contact info for Voice 370 to please post it to the chat, so I'll see it sometime today. And also, they could email it or call me, and the email is fieldmcc@yahoo.com. Excuse me, that's for Mensa. Anyway, and my phone number is 715-307-8222, knowing I will not answer, and so it won't cost her any minutes. That's a way of checking to see if my dial tone or my ringer's on, which I think it is. We'll find out if she calls me. If she doesn't call me, we'll still find out. It's not important. As far as the Voice 370, there's also there's the next of kin. It's probably the same organization, but are you familiar, yes or no, with the name Sarah Bajic?
Yes.
I sent her an email last night. She was also addressed in the blurb for today's radio show. And today's radio show was blurbed to the attorney that participated, :08-1600 (RMC). Why do I keep mentioning that? Well, it's real easy, because that one lawsuit, had it been tried in a just manner, would have made it impossible for Malaysia Flight 370 to end up the way it has. And how has it ended up? Well, it ended up landing, I think it was 0651 on the 8th of March. It landed safely. Question in my mind, were the passengers asleep because of the ATI, or were the passengers dead because of the ATI? Because I see a double hijack, and I'm not sure who the first hijackers were. They were bad people. They hijacked it. In fact, I think in your Sherlockian-like thinking, you like to consider weapon, opportunity, motive. Matthias Chang, the attorney down there in Malaysia, has addressed the motive. The opportunity occurred at BITOD, Bravo India. I got that right, BITOD. I had misspelled it several times, BIDOT. But anyway, it's confusing. But it's a waypoint on the flight plan on the 025 of Kuala Lumpur, and that's where the opportunity presented itself, because the aircraft was in a cone of confusion because it was simultaneously controllable from Malaysia ATC, which is haunted by Serco. It also at that time could have been giving inputs or restrictions from Singapore ATC, and it also was in the geographic airspace where Vietnam ATC could have been involved. So when there's general confusion, which is exactly what occurred during the rehearsal for 9/11, that was June 1st and 2nd of 2001, I can show you a page in Amalgam Virgo, the briefing guide. Note to Pat S. We need to publish the Amalgam Virgo brief color paper and have it available to people coming to the plunge. I got to back up a little bit, David. One of the ladies coming to the plunge who I've never met and I know very little about is her. She's in the chat room right now. I think she's disguised herself as Jody Justice or something like that. But she had a question about whether she's a plunger because she's coming to the Plum Plunge. And I had a telepathic conference with Scott B. in Milwaukee, decided that she would be an official plunger, and we'll give her the appropriate reward when she and her friend gets here. We have a lot of people coming. I had a little bit of good fortune in the last 24 hours. And so let me see if this is Ginger Cookie, because if it is, I won't answer. I think it is, so I'm not going to answer. That good fortune to the parents of Aaron Carson Vaughn getting a free ride up to Minneapolis and stay where they want, and we'll drive them around. If they don't want to rent a car, we can drive them around in a limousine or anything else. And in a stunning development, David, I wish you could see what I'm going to show everybody. I had a package arrive this morning. Well, there's the package. That great big box is the package. And when I say package, I'm not talking about our super small, very young secret agent, sometimes known as the package. But that package I just showed you had license plates, extortion 17 license plates. I'll go unwrap it while David talks, and everybody will get a real good picture of the license. We can get different colored magic markers, probably 2 colors, one for boys, one for girls. And every one of us that's an Able Danger member, and the membership is known once you have a character name. And all the character names that we know of are on a 60-foot runner that will be on the table at Vino in the Valley for our dinner at 5 p.m. on the 17th of July. So if people are traveling in on Thursday, you probably need to travel in fairly early. Otherwise, plan on getting here Wednesday night. But that's all up to you guys individually, because this is a public event. Nobody can put controls or constraints. The problem last year and the problem this year is sufficient lodging. And this year we got it handled real well, especially if I get the dates, whether I get them from Pat S., who's Freeport girl, or if I get them from the family of Aaron Carson Vaughn. I just need to know the dates that Karen and Bill, and I'll probably get that information today somehow. But once I find out for sure when they need to be lodged and where, it'll be my pleasure to provide that and give credit to Able Danger. And it really doesn't matter where the money comes from. The money will arrive in time to take care of all that. And I can tell you it's not necessarily coming from me, but it might be. But it doesn't matter, because I see so many people either doing things because of money, or worse yet, failing to do things because of money. It's really unfortunate. So far, I have been very blessed to not be financially constrained, and yet I could be tomorrow, because that's the nature of the world. And even though I'm a citizen of the world, I'm a citizen of some other place, somebody will probably put it up, because everybody that knows me well knows what I'm a citizen of. And David, what I'm holding right in front of you, actually in front of the camera, is a license plate, steel, or is it aluminum? Doesn't matter, it's metal. What it says, across the top it says SOC, Special Operations Chief, that's a rank and a rate. Aaron C. for Carson, Vaughn, United States Navy. Extortion 17 was the mission name for the helicopter he should not have been in. The date of the assassination of that SEAL team was the 6th of August of 2001. This badge is something that proud that he had earned that badge. It's not easily earned. The failure rate of prospective SEALs is probably around 70 to 80 or more percent. Molon Lobby, I think it's Greek, doesn't matter. It means come and take it, or come and get it. And I invite anybody in the United States government that doesn't like my direct manner of communicating to come on to Plum City and try to get what you want. You may not succeed. David, over to you.
No, that's right, Field, and it's intriguing that this model that I believe we've kind of formulated on the fly over the last 48 hours could apply not just to the hijacking of MH370, but to any group of families who have lost relatives during these false flag attacks. And of course, I think if we can bring some closure to those people, we will collectively have earned money that would perhaps be as little as 20% of what would be charged by a so-called professional team of private investigators. But I digress. Let's just read the first paragraph of the post that went out today. Plum City, abledanger.net, June 9, 2014. United States Marine Field McConnell will make a simulator video, ATC Serco's cat bomb trackers, AFB Boeing's Cat 3C, in which he will play the role of Captain Zahari to show the Voice 370 families why he is alleging that Serco's air traffic control ATC agents used the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, BUAP, to support its, that's Serco's, cat bond asset tracking services during the Flight 370 hijack and a Cat 3C landing at US Air Force Base AFB on the British Indian Ocean territory of Diego Garcia. Do you feel that any of the words or phrases in that first paragraph need defining over the air? Over to you.
Well, let me address something. First of all, I love this energy that is Able Danger. Taco Man just put up a song called Plunger Boy. And I put up a comment to Taco Man. I'll be interested in his response. Taco, did you know that when I flew F4s, my call sign was Plunger, Plunger? This is getting to be great fun because a lot of people that are 64 years old, are sort of worn out, tired, bored, worried, sick, or dead. In something that I've been called to do, and if you want to see how you can get called, it's in Psalm 94:16, and I think one of the ladies, maybe from Texas or Massachusetts or elsewhere, is about ready. In fact, Georgia. Georgia. Anyway, there's a lady down in Georgia who has a name very similar to Elvis's surname who might be able to put up that link. If not, the lady from Texas or Massachusetts might be. Till I'm going home to Massachusetts, something's telling me. Anyway, guess who's in Massachusetts right now? You're right, Jack Mack. So David, now that I've delayed, and even though you don't understand why I break into those songs, it's amazing. I got comments yesterday from a man in England, a man in New Zealand, a man in California, which reminds me, the man in California that I bought and this is my list of bills to pay today, and that's one of them. I put the amount in cards, and I know who the fellow is. He's one of our agents, I think. Let's see if he's here today. He starts with S. Oh, wait a minute. Could start with M. Nope, he's not here today. Anyway, Plunger Boy is something that Taco Man put up. And I don't think he knew that my call sign was Plunger. I think I can find that name tag electronically and put it up. David, I'm not delaying you or forgetting you, but I see that the lady in Texas put up Psalm 94:16. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Woody. Okay? This is sort of blunt and in your face to Eric Holder, Barry Swatero, Christine Marcy, Hillary Clinton, and the rest of the crapola quartet. I will. Field McConnell, Molon Lobby, come and get it. If anyone in the Department of Justice, at FAA, at FBI, at NTSB, or Airline Pilots Association does not like me spreading the truth with great energy, well, first of all, you can form a line out in front of 401 Main Street, and then you can all, I'm going to read your paragraph right before I turn it over to you. Here comes your paragraph. I think. Plum City, abledanger.net, today's date, which is not only the 43rd anniversary of my graduating from Annapolis, but the 90th day since Craig Peterson put up a YouTube called the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot. Today, from Plum City, United States Marine me will make a simulator, or I guess I'm announcing I will make a simulator video, ATC Serco's Cat Bomb Trackers, Air Force Base Boeing's Cat 3C, in which he'll play the role of Captain Zahari to show the Voice 370 agents use the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot to support its Cat Bond asset tracking services during the Flight 370 hijack and Cat 3C landing at the U.S. Air Force Base on the British Indian Ocean territory of Diego Garcia. Let's see, what does it say here? Am I calling field or someone else? I wasn't paying attention. I was also masticating. Yes, no, you called me and I based the Southwest 737 backed into a parked Airbus, damaging both jets but causing no. The Southwest airliner was carrying passengers for blah, 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 blah. The JetBlue. It's really amazing that they continue to crunch metal. I'm going to say something rather direct, and I will ask anybody that thinks I'm wrong to file a lawsuit against me. A lot of the reasons why we're having these aviation incidents is because since 1995, in the case of Boeing, and 1989 in the case of Airbus, crews have been reduced from 3 in a jet to 2 in a jet. And the reason they could do that is because of the Boeing Honeywell Uninterruptible Autopilot. And the Boeing Honeywell Uninterruptible Autopilot is being covered in Chapter 7 of Book 14. And there's an development both on the military and the civilian side of the military-industrial complex that has resulted, here it comes, every single fly-by-wire glass cockpit aircraft is a drone. It can be droned at any time. That's what happened to Malaysia 370. The opportunity presented itself as it did every night when the flight was at the handoff point from Malaysia ATC to Vietnam ATC. At that point, a malevolent actor triggered a BHUAP commandeering of Malaysia Flight 370, and it was in a left-hand turn. I've alleged before that I believe it's possible that the turn was to go back to the Petronas Towers and destroy them. Of this person, the most, is Jack Mack, who is absolutely certain that's not the case. And I'm not taking issue with Jack Mack. I respect him, or otherwise I wouldn't mention his name like I just did. But the first turn, which was from the 025-degree radial north-northeast of Kuala Lumpur to a westerly heading, was accomplished through the, I think it was almost immediately recommandeered by the United States Air Force. If the United States Air Force recommandeered it, after the first commandeering entity had triggered the ATI, would somebody who knows what ATI stands for post it? And if nobody else knows what it stands for, which I'm sure somebody out there does, I'll post it when I come up for air, which is almost imminent. The United States Air Force and the United States and Boeing would look bad if, I'm going to do this as it happens, if the airplane's heading north-northeast, 025, and somebody, is that east? No, this is east, north-northeast. If somebody triggered it into a turn to go, let's just say for argument's sake, to turn it back to Kuala Lumpur, intentions unknown. If they also push the mission, automated tranquilizing injector is another definition. They're both the same thing. But what would happen if the United States Air Force took the aircraft, turned it away from Kuala Lumpur and headed it to Diego Garcia, not knowing that the initial commandeering also involved the ATI? And what if the ATI was used with a dose that was not just tranquilizing, but incurred death? Then the United States Air Force, the United States of America, might look like they killed all those people since they would arrive safely at Diego Garcia. Did that happen? We don't know, but someone does. And the someones include, I believe, Malaysia, the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, and Circle. So somebody's going to squeal. In the meantime, David, I'll turn it over to you while I hit this Voice 370 link and let people there know we're on the radio right now. Over to you, David.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Field. And of course, this is a fascinating exercise where the incompetent and the corrupt have consistently underestimated the collective intelligence of we the people. Because you laid down in cyberspace the challenge, I think, on the 9th of March of this year, the definition and the explanation of how the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot could have been used to execute the maneuvers that have been witnessed on March the 8th of 2014 and the subsequent phony search program. And you've been out to the theater of interest and you've met, if I dare say it, a bunch of taffy pullers who have attempted to manipulate the world's leading fighter pilot off his targets and failed. And it's now 90 days later. And let me put the second paragraph into the chat room. McConnell will use Able Danger's cloud-centric crime scene investigation and whistle-blowing network at his own cost to make the Serco Boeing 370 simulation video. Now, someone who shall be nameless out there in the theater of interest seems to have been pushing us away from going after Serco and trying to focus on Boeing. And Boeing is staffed primarily by production workers, technicians, engineers, and scientists, of which I've been at various stages in my career an example. And I can assure the public at large that the great majority of engineers and scientists and technicians and production workers are honorable people that work to very high standards, significantly higher standards than that twit at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And if you ask him to show or demonstrate his technical, scientific, or engineering skill set, it will be a pretty short interview because he has none. And the same is true of David Cameron, who studied philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford University. And as far as I can see, what that prepares you to do is to put together a pretty convincing argument without requiring any facts to substantiate them. And another guy who did philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford University is Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister of Australia. Our guy, Stephen Harper, in Canada, was a failed municipal grade economist at the University of Calgary for a while, so he's never had a proper job. And as for Barry, well, words fail me. Other than being groomed in a pedophile ring in Jakarta when he was 7 years old, I don't see any conspicuous talents in network installation, which allows the President of the United States and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to issue flash override commands to every position down the chain of command. And he must have issued such flash override instructions on March the 8th, or the people who operated the network issued those same instructions in his name, either with his consent or without his consent. And unfortunately for the United States of America and the Malaysian government, the people operating the Defense Red Switch network on Diego Garcia are our old friend Serco. So Serco is in serious danger of being recognized as the giant wakes up from its decades-old or century of slumber as a racketeering, influenced and corrupt organization with a very interesting paramilitary force in Chicago that won a contract to enforce parking fines in 1997. So what's happened with Chicago is Serco, the British company, has placed a paramilitary extortion group in Chicago to make sure that any obstacles for the community organizer's career to transfer from a succubi or succubus at Sidley Austin law firm into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue was either intimidated into silence or eliminated. So let's go to the third paragraph. And this is where I believe we can, at Able Danger, thanks to your leadership, Phil, and whether you like it or not, you are a leader.
Oh.
And read on. While McConnell notes that the Voice 370 families are seeking $5 million to pay for such services, that's crime scene investigation and whistleblowing, Able Danger will accept $1 million to be paid in 2 equal installments. The first payment is due only if the families find the video is worth the money, so they're under no obligation to pay Able Danger any money at all. So it's cash on delivery of a product of a suitable standard, as far as that is perceived by the families. And the second payment of $500,000 is due only if of making a Cat 3C landing at FJDG. Any comments, Phil?
Yeah, I'm at the MH370's family Facebook page. Ask me, David.
If you had any comment on that third paragraph. Well, while you're doing that, let me just make a few points, Phil, and this is my personal opinion. I think the Able Danger team has done outstanding work, and it is not useful to try and separate out any one individual from the other in terms of the contribution that they make, because quite often one sentence or a collage or a clue or a tip can lead the team to the situation it finds itself in now, which is the world's only cloud-centric crime scene investigation with a track record of speaking the truth to power. So I do think it would be interesting for you, and I would defer to you in all such judgments, to think about the distribution if Able Danger did bring in $1 million, $500,000 because it had produced a video that the families considered worth the money, and $500,000 because Able Danger was able to prove that the plane was capable of a Cat 3C landing on Diego Garcia. And I think it should be, then it's up to you, and maybe you don't want to discuss this, and we can discuss it at a later date, to take care of the Able Danger overhead and then distribute it in the manner that you find the most equitable. Anyway, that's my last words on that. Now, going back to this video that is, so to speak, emerging as a storyboard in your mind, and so much emerges in your mind that really I don't want to go in there with you. But if I understand correctly, the probability will be that you will get a full motion simulator to do this video. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, if anybody wanted to, and I'm talking about any airline, if any airline wanted to get some good credit, they could offer me a simulator, or they could sell me the simulator time. Otherwise, the current plan is, the most likely plan is to rent a simulator that's operated by a corporation in Miami called Pan Am, and they do simulator training in Miami as well as Minneapolis and maybe a third location. If I'm going to do a simulator, I'm going to do it between, well, I'm probably going to do it in June. And it'll be a lot easier to do it once my 20-year-old daughter gets home, which I think is later this week. But if there's the Pan Am facility, in Egan. I think it's Egan. Who cares? It used to be called NATCO, which was the Northwest Airlines Training Center. Now it's owned by Pan Am. They have regional jets, but see, it really doesn't matter what the airplane is, because if you can fly the cockpit, you can fly the airplane. Because this may come as a shock to a lot of you, but all the cockpits are pretty much standard, and so the airplane really doesn't matter anymore, which goes back to the comment I made about since 1989, every Airbus has been dronable. Since 1995, every 7576. Most of us adults realize 1995 came before 2001. So if we know that all the Boeings were drone capable in 1995, we know that what you saw or think you saw on 9/11 was not human flown Boeings hitting buildings. The aircraft that made up flights United 175 and 93 and American flights 11 and 77, those aircraft, three of those four aircraft were dealt with in Whiskey 386 Alpha airspace. That's premeditated murder. The fourth was 41 minutes late. And as time goes by, it's looking more and more like Able Danger appeared at a 41-minute departing Newark. Too late, in fact, to strike its target, the U.S. Capitol building, where both the Congress and the Senate were there. And a sissy named Kerry from Massachusetts ran out, and he was running so fast to get out of the building that he knocked the lady over. And of course, being a gentleman, he didn't turn around to help pick her up. He just knocked her over and kept right on running. Speaking of sissies who like to run, Kerry, Gore, and Barry Soetoro come to mind. Might as well throw in a side order of Eric Holder. He's not going to like Chapter 7. David, over to you. By the way, did you ask me a question and did I answer?
No, I was just inviting you to consider what might be done if we were able to justify to the Voice 370 group that our services were worth $1 million on the stipulations that we suggested in your letter. So I've just posted the fourth paragraph in that post that went out this morning. 90 days following the publishing of the YouTube Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, McConnell now withdraws his offer to 5 nations in the region and turns to the MH370 NOK, that's next of kin, as the appropriate party with which to align. That's excellent grammar, Phil. You didn't end the sentence with a preposition.
Did you say something like that, preparation H?
Say that again?
Did you say something about preparation H?
No, I said with which to. You didn't end the sentence with the preposition.
Oh, okay. Well, that's because I have really good English grammar, and my diction is impeccable, especially when I'm not masticating. But I grew up in a family.
Let's not go there.
Do you know what
did you know how frogs masticate?
Yeah, they with their jaws.
No, they. When the tongue goes out.
Yep.
And you catch a fly if you're a frog, and the fly comes back to the roof of your mouth.
Yep.
They then pound the fly into bits with their retracted eyeballs, which is why you never see a frog masticating with its eyes open.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad we all learned that. But let's get back to getting Malaysia 370's families to contact us. I just left a link at their, Facebook site. So, and I gave them my real name, my real phone number, my real email, and if they're really serious, and I would think that most of the families are, I hope they don't have somebody leading the effort who is not committed to the effort, which reminds me, I've sent 2 emails to Sarah Bodgick, and I haven't heard anything from her. But, she's probably pretty busy. David, over to you.
Yeah, I'm sure she's busy. And just as an aside, this is an example where quite obviously there is an absence of professional forensic crime scene investigation. It is alleged that her boyfriend secreted an iPad. Well, I think it would be an iPod. No, it wouldn't be an iPod. What's the smallest Apple device? Anyway, it was secreted up his rectum.
I don't think so. I don't think that's possible. I think he just had it stuck between a pair of buns.
Okay, now, if that were true, then it is the job of the investigator not to hunt around in water of 10,000-foot depth in the southern Indian Ocean and look for this aircraft there of these records from personal computer devices, determine if in fact there was a signal from Sarah Bajik's boyfriend. Doesn't matter where it was on his anatomy, because as I understand it, they use GPS triangulation to locate her boyfriend and his personal computer device on the British Indian Ocean territory of Diego Garcia. So what did Sherlock Holmes say? He said, once you've excluded the impossible, the improbable, no matter how unlikely, is true. So since Able Danger, I believe we operate using the Sherlockian methods, right? Once we have excluded the possibility that he did have, this is a boyfriend, have a PCD on that island, then it could be said, well, it may be true the plane is in the southern Indian Ocean. The plane never landed on Diego Garcia. But you can see the taffy pullers have actually collectively masked all of these interesting leads. They've decanted them into this massive basket of so-called conspiracy theories, but the stupidity of these people is outstanding because their conspiracy is in the basket with all the other conspiracy theories. So in fact, they can't dismiss any conspiracy theory because their conspiracy theory hasn't transpired into truth. So let me just put in a little bit of evidence here, and this is about the case published Sunday, June 8th, 2014. Several families of those aboard flight MH370 on Sunday launched a drive to raise $5 million to reward any insider who comes forward and resolves the mystery of the plane's disappearance exactly 3 months ago. Do you have any comments on what constitutes an insider from their point of view, Field? Over to you.
Yeah, I was just noticing that word too, and my guess is they're talking about somebody at Boeing, at Rolls-Royce, at the government of Malaysia, or the government of China, or the government of the UK, US, Australia. The entities that control the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot would all be considered insiders. And I think that probably, we probably would be considered outsiders. And of course, everyone within the sound of my voice knows what's coming next because the outsiders only had one hit. And I believe it was in 1966, it could have been 69. The song was Time Won't Let Me, and the lead singer was Sonny Jurassi from Toledo, Ohio, I think. And it goes something like this: I can't wait forever, even though you want me to. I can't wait forever. Time won't let me, oh no. Anyway, I'll put that in the next chapter. Time won't let me. And now I'm going to go find out where they were from. And I think it's Toledo, Ohio, but it could have been Akron. Over to you, David.
Okay, well, I think this insider word is very important because I don't think, well, I believe the Voice 370 people as a collective, and of course we don't know who the leaders there, when they say insiders, they've actually excluded a certain group that might at first blush be thought of as insiders. So let me read what Sarah Bajk is alleged to have said. Sarah Bajk, partner of American passenger Philip Wood, said a handful of families were behind the campaign to look at the unprecedented aviation mystery with a fresh set of eyes. And this is a quote. Governments and agencies have given it their best shot, but have failed to turn up a single shred of evidence, either because of a faulty approach or due to intentional misdirection by one or more individuals, she said in the release. So I rather respect this woman. She seems to speak good sense. But my interpretation or inference of what she means there is she doesn't think the insider is going to come from within the government and the agencies, or their subcontractors, or their crony subcontractors. So she can tell us if we're wrong, but I don't think she believes that Inmarsat people who did that phony Doppler calculation without any triangulation to put the search into the southern Indian Ocean, I don't think she thinks there's an Inmarsat character who's going to pop up, whistleblower, and saying we're full of SHIT. I don't think she thinks that a Boeing personnel individual, I don't think the guy who invited you out to Malaysia believes that anyone within the group he either controls or is aware of is going to have the courage to stand up and blow the whistle. So I would say, actually, Field, I don't know if I'm disagreeing with you there, but I think you are the perfect insider from Sarah Bajk's point of view, because you have been inside this issue since filing, and if not before, filing that court case on May the 1st of 2007. Over to you.
Actually, you're 3 months off. It was February 27th of 2007. Responded to my lawsuit, the title of which was Civil Case 3:07-CV-24, and it was titled also McConnell versus ALPA and Boeing. And what ALPA did was they committed a felonious fraud upon the court, which they'll have another crack at. And what Boeing did was they admitted 4 days later that they do in fact have the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, and they said if they'd had it on 9/11, 9/11 would have been impossible. Oops, that's what's called too much information, Boeing, because you, I'm quoting you directly, had this been available on 9/11, 9/11 would have been impossible. Well, you've hoisted yourself on your own petard, Boeing, because we have the patent proof that since 1995, the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot was standard equipment on every 75, 76, and 77 that came out of the factory, which means once you take a look at Boeing's quote and you justify it, you come up with, because the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot was available prior to 9/11, the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot made 9/11 possible. And there's a lot of chatter in the chat room about the insensitivity of TSA. Well, TSA and DHS, neither one are necessary. The government. In other words, the dark night or whatever that was on July 20th of 2012, where a bunch of people were killed by 3 lone gunmen. Then in August at Cudahy, Wisconsin, there was a Sikh temple shooting that involved probably 3 lone gunmen. Sandy Hook, which is why these 3 people had flown the coop. Janet Napolitano stepped down. Able Danger was tying her directly to Sandy Hook. 2 more names. A police commissioner named Reuben Bradford stepped down on December 26th of 2013 because he didn't like our Google pairing. And then the senior Connecticut state policeman just stepped down within the last 30 days, I'm guessing. And why did these guys all step down? Because Able Danger and very few others have published that these are all false flags. These false flags, the Boston Marathon lack of explosion, they were all planned by Department of Homeland Security, and the sub-program within the DHS is HSEEP, which is Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program. Please correct me if I misspoke. David, over to you.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's just worth talking about this outfit in Malaysia that is alleged to have an investigation going that's kind of credible, which is nonsense. Malaysia and Australia, which is leading the search far off its western coast, have promised that the hunt for the plane will continue. An international team is now determining an expanded search zone of up to 60,000 square kilometers, 24,000 square miles. I mean, how ridiculous. Based on where the aircraft last communicated with an Inmarsat satellite. Australia has also released a request for tenders for a company to be engaged as a prime contractor and provide the expertise, equipment, and vessels needed to carry out the deep sea search from August. Malaysia, ruled by the same coalition since 1957, with a history of sweeping scandals aside, has taken the brunt of criticism from upset relatives. Well, in 1960s, mid-1960s, I believe, the uncle of the Churchill grandsons, Rupert and Nicholas Soames, the uncle being Duncan Sands, was Minister for Colonies, and he did a couple of interesting things. He negotiated Malaysian independence with some side deals, quite obviously reserved for the profit of the City of London livery companies. And he negotiated the handover of British Indian Ocean Territory on Diego Garcia to the United States military when I believe General Alexander Haig had a significant role in that scuzzy deal. Because what that allowed the United Kingdom to do was maintain the police force and, if you will, crime scene investigators on Diego Garcia that then, with American money and American technology, became the world's premier signals and intelligence base. And also a wonderful place for Christine Marcy to and torture services. So, for example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was taken allegedly to Diego Garcia and waterboarded 180 times. And lo and behold, the guys confessed to everything, including Project Bojinka. Could you just mention Project Bojinka, Phil? Over to you.
Yeah, I can. It was a plan to take 10 747s on Pacific flight plans and destroy them simultaneously. And it involved, as I recall, United and Northwest flights. Keep in mind that during the time of Bojinka, I happened to be working for Northwest. Probably just a coincidence. And when I retired from Northwest in a 10-minute decision, I was carried on paper as a Boeing 747 captain, which was the highest paying job at North amongst passenger airliners that existed at the time. Does that matter? No, I'm just stating it because it's a piece of history. And Bojinka was unraveled because in the Philippines, fire department personnel responding to an apartment fire broke the door down and found an inordinate amount of computers and diagrams for how to assemble explosions. And also the Bojinka group involved a man who was later taken prisoner. A guy that I flew the F-4s with in Fargo was a DEA agent. I'm not going to mention his name, but anybody in Fargo would know it. I'm trying to remember. I can picture the guy. Do you remember the name of the guy who was doing Bojinka, and he later did the World Trade 93, and then he was captured in Pakistan by my happy hooligan friend? Do you remember his name, David?
Isn't that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed?
No, it's not. So I'll have to go.
Ramzi Youssef?
Yeah, that's it, Ramzi Youssef. And that's sort of funny because my friend, the DEA agent, he sort of operated within the DEA the same way I operated within the airlines and the Air Force, which was he operated sort of fast and loose, and so did I. In fact, I got a trophy for shooting 2 missiles without a clearance. And for years, because I don't dwell on this stuff, but because of the nature of what David and I have been doing for the last 7.5 years, I have to vow God's prepared me for this mission. And for years, David, after the 1986 William Tell, I thought, You know, it's sort of funny that I won 40% of the, I won 2 of the 5 profiles, and I was competing against supposedly the best pilots that the Air Force and the Canadian forces could field. How's that for an interesting verb? Well, the funny part is, it was just within the last year it dawned on me, no, I didn't win 40% of the events. I won 100% because I only flew in 2 profiles and I won them both. And is that bragging? No, it's not. It's laughing. In fact, you know what? God planned 9/11. Whoever planned Malaysia 370, God is laughing at you. And so are David and I. We're not laughing because we think it's funny that cruel and unusual punishment has been projected upon 239 families, both, well, in a variety of countries, including the United States of America, China, Malaysia. Um, that's not funny at all. But what's ironic is the fact it would have been impossible had the fraud upon the court not occurred. And I will just mention the people who perpetrated the fraud, followed by the president. The attorneys, Rob Plunkett, Suzanne Kalfus, Kalfus, and James Johnson, along with their paid mouthpiece, Pete John Hoonan. Those 4 people know that was a fraud upon the court. The judge does not know, at least not that I'm aware of. Her name's Rosemary M. Collier. She will be getting some more paperwork from me. The parties that are or were presidents of ALPA that are aware of the fraud upon the court in the order of appearance include Randy Babbitt, until he got caught driving drunk. Am I criticizing drunk drivers? Nope, because I'd be historically hypocritical if I were to do so. But I'll tell you, if you're making, well, I think the guy that's the president of ALPA right now made $1.28 million in 2012. You don't need to pay a pilot $1.28 million to do honest things. Think about that. The guy I'm talking about is Lee Moak. At one point, he was a Marine fighter pilot. Now he's a $1.28 million part of the problem. In between Lee Moak and Randy Babbitt, the drunk driver, was Dwayne Worth, Werth. Maybe somebody can Google. I think his middle initials S. Doesn't matter. Can't be too many Dwayne Worths. Werth. Everybody at Northwest referred to him as worthless, which is very offensive to people that are truly worthless because he's so much more evil than a worthless person. But when people will trade aviation safety for $1 million or so, they're evil people. They may not think they're evil, but they may not think they're ugly or stupid looking. And I left one out, John Prater, Continental pilot. He was the president of ALPA that I communicated most directly to. So we have a lot of guilt to spread around. And you know what? When you take all these guilty parties, these evil parties, this obstruction of justice and fraud upon the court, and you sift it down to its base elements, it's really evil perpetrated against we the people of all nations, because every time somebody gets on an airliner today, if it's a fly-by-wire, you're getting on a drone. Now, is it going to be droned during your flight? Very slim chances. Can it be droned? 100% chance it can be droned. And so, do you want to be on an airplane with no human pilots? Most of us would say no. Well, even if you have human pilots, if they're taken out of the equation by the Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot, you are on an aircraft that has no pilots, because the uninterruptible autopilot, the key word is uninterruptible. Once it's triggered, it's staying on. It's got its own electrical source. Until Malaysia 370 came along, existed, and that the back door could be slammed shut and locked. Fortunately for the United States of America, they knew how to do it. So when the bad people, this is my allegation, when the bad people took Malaysia 370, the United States Air Force took it back. Unfortunately, this is a possibility. Unfortunately, from the United States perspective, the first hijacking agents could have pushed the Abu Garcia. You have 239 corpses to deal with, and it would just look like you did it, when actually they didn't. Perhaps it was Serco. David, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Field. And you mentioned Ramzi Youssef, and this is interesting because your sister put three extraordinary characters in adjacent cells at that Supermax jail, one being Ramzi Youssef. Then there was Ted Kaczynski, allegedly the Unabomber, and the third was Timothy McVeigh, who she and her Serco cronies had deployed to put bombs in the Murrah Federal Building, including, and these people really are scum, a bomb under the childcare center because they do like killing children. So Timothy McVeigh, I believe, was the first patsy to be executed to conceal this development of the catastrophe bond asset tracking service by Serco. And so he was executed in 2001 for obvious reasons, because they couldn't guarantee this man would keep his mouth shut prior to the 9/11 attack on the United States of America. So who in Serco around that 1995-96 period, or who associated with the outsourcing of contracts to Serco, could have had the technical and financial skills to structure these very extraordinary instruments known as catastrophe bonds? And it's just worth doing a quick riff on what is a catastrophe bond. So I put in the chat room the definition in Wikipedia. Catastrophe bonds, also known as cat bonds, are risk-linked securities that transfer a specified set of risks from a sponsor to investors. They were created and first used in the mid-1990s in the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew and the Northridge earthquake. That's not true. They were used to finance the bombing attack on the Murrah building. And the people who were tracking the assets, and this is the sponsor's assets, into the Murrah building crime scene, is an organization that I believe was set up in the 1920s. I don't know its original name, but is now known as the Defense Ammunition Network. And the Defense Ammunition Network keeps track of all explosives. It doesn't have any manufacturing role. It has a testing and qualification and certification role, but it keeps track of every piece of ammunition and explosive that is manufactured and processed in the production units of the United States of America, of which the biggest is an outfit called ATK, which is apparently the biggest manufacturer of ammunition, and is also the manufacturer of the solid propellant rocket fuel used to vaporize the various aircraft where evidence needs to be destroyed, and vaporize the internal columns and associated with the elevator shafts of the Twin Towers 1 and 2 and building number 7. And the career of Chris Hyman, the former and disgraced CEO of Serco, is very interesting in terms of the development of cat bonds and cat bond asset tracking. So let me go to his movements on 911. He goes, I presume, and I don't know yet, but we will find out when this guy is on trial for his life, he would have checked into a hotel in the vicinity of the World Trade Center because he had a very early morning breakfast meeting. My guess is he checked into what is known as the 911 Hotel, the Marriott Hotel, and was part of the group of people who were going to stage a cat bond simulation on 911. And they would have fanned out in various parts of the area associated with Ground Zero, but he would have gone into Tower 1 and probably got into the high-speed elevator that was commissioned in March of 2001 by a subcontractor for Otis, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of UTC, on whose board was a woman by the name of Jamie Gorelick, who prefers to have her name pronounced Gorelick to avoid the obvious and unfortunate metaphor. But he goes up to the Windows of the World restaurant, which is on the 106th floor, and he either makes a presentation or briefs the group of people that were organizing the Risk Waters Congress and the delegates from about 71 major financial institutional investors in the Windows of the World restaurant. So let's say hypothetically the breakfast meeting is at 8 o'clock. And I'm alleging that Christopher Hyman knew that the attack would be at 8:46 or start at 8:46. So he describes a cat bond investment opportunity to the people in the Windows of the World restaurant. And you can think of a cat bond as offering two groups of people the chance to make serious money: the sponsors and the investors. Now, the sponsor of the cat bond places a relatively small amount of money in the hands of an escrow, which I believe was Serco, and its legal advisors Linklater and its bankers, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank Corporation. So Serco holds in its left hand the money of the sponsor, which is trying to protect itself against being wiped out if the catastrophe actually happens. On the right-hand side of Serco is the money from the investors, typically the people who represent the big, dumb, stupid pension funds, such as Barry Svitoro and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Michelle. Gee whiz, what's that?
The noise?
Yeah.
It's me opening a jar of candy. If you had a camera, if you could watch, you could see what I'm doing. But if you want to know what kind of candy it is, it's this kind. I just put it up so everybody, is this the noise again? Because if it is that it, David?
Is what it?
Oh, you didn't hear. Okay, never mind. Not to take you off track, but I'm just getting some candy because I feel like having dessert now that I'm done masticating. Over to you.
Okay, so Chris Hyman goes up to the Windows of the World restaurant on the 106th floor at 8 o'clock for a breakfast meeting with the Risk Waters people, many of them coming out from the United Kingdom because it's a UK risk company, together with the delegates from Reuters and JP Morgan, and they're sitting at this breakfast meeting, and this is purely hypothetical. He says to them, I'm going to organize, as Serco's chief executive officer, what is known as a cat bond asset tracking war game. And I'm going down to the 47th floor to run the war game, where the sponsor will make a great deal of money if both of these towers are demolished today. And the investors, which can stay in this room on the 106th floor, are going to make a great deal of money if the towers do not come down on the same day. So if you're in that meeting and you're representing the Teachers' Pension Fund or Reuters clients under the LIBOR scheme, you have the choice. You can go down with Chris Hyman to the 47th floor if you don't think the tower's going to collapse, or you can stay in the windows of the World Restaurant and get vaporized. Of course, this is a simulation, just to prove that the software, Serco software for asset tracking, works. What would you do, Field, if you were in that restaurant?
Okay, give me the two choices again while I masticate, and then I'll tell you what I do.
Okay, you're in the Windows of the World restaurant, 106th floor, at an 8 o'clock breakfast meeting, and Chris Hyman makes a presentation to you, and he says, I'm going to set up an exercise for cat bonds so that you can understand what a cat bond is, and you can follow me down to the 47th floor, in which case we will represent the sponsors that are trying to cover themselves against both towers being demolished on the same day, or you can stay in the Windows of the World restaurant, where you will represent the investors who don't believe both towers are going to come down on the same day. And depending on which floor you go to, you're either going to make a great deal of money or you're going to be very dead. What decision would you have taken?
Well, I decided long before you finished the question that what I would do is I would follow him to the stairwell. And after we'd gone down approximately 3 or 4 stairs in the first series, I'd push him. Because if I pushed him over and then pommeled him to death or slammed his head against the rail, I would be, in fact, obstructing the attack of 9/11 because until he gets down to the trading floor, they can't proceed. It would be the same as the 3-minute event at the Pentagon when the Canadian directed aircraft failed to knock off their attack. 3 minutes in flying time at 8 miles a minute, 3 times 8, 24. So about 30 miles out, when they broke the 30-mile ring of the Pentagon, Captain Gerald DeCanto reached for the phone to call Secretary of the Navy Gordon England and request permission to provide defensive fire against the attacking aerospace vehicles. This is exactly like when Extortion 17 was intentionally destroyed on the 6th of August of 2011 to kill the SEAL team that otherwise could have come back to the United States and borne witness to the fact that Obama did not catch Osama because they participated in the raid and they didn't capture the guy. Well, of course, Obama then needs to shut those guys up. So he asked the Army to please arrange for an accident of Extortion 17. So some weasel in the Army helped assemble a situation where also a 3-minute rule was broken, and that is if you don't have the landing zone for a helicopter, if you can't visually sanitize it 3 minutes before the helicopter lands, the helicopter's landing zone arrival has to be aborted. So let me back up and tell you that I would push him over and then I would render him dead to prevent America from being attacked. In the case of Gerald DeCanto, had I been the duty officer, I would have launched defensive weapons. And if you don't think I would, you weren't listening when I said that I was the guy who fired 2 missiles without a clearance, and I won 40% of the profiles of Willie Tell 86, but actually I won 100% of the profiles I flew in because after firing the second missile without a clearance, I was grounded, and it was a huge embarrassment for the Air Force because they grounded me, which made me the highest paid guy there because I got paid for a month to fly one flight, then lay at the beach and drink beer for the rest of the month. But my job back in 1986 was to project force and not to, had I been at the Pentagon, I would have defended the Pentagon regardless of the risk of my career. Had I been involved in the command of the operation involving Extortion 17, I would have aborted the mission in a heartbeat. And had I been following Buster Hyman down the steps, I would have knocked him over. And then after he was down on the ground, I'd bash his head in if that's what it takes. I'm not a violent person. In fact, I don't even like violent persons. But whoever attacked America on 9/11, whoever caused Extortion 17 to blow up, turning to me as soup, And whoever put 3 rounds, 223 caliber rounds through the forehead of Pat Tillman, you know, even though I'm not violent, I do keep score, and I'm willing to get even if that's God's will. David, over to you while I go over and grab my extortion 17 license plates.
Okay, excellent, Fiona. And that's why what you just said makes you the perfect insider for Sarah Bajk and Voice 370 to tear this thing apart. Now, when Chris Hyman went down from floor 106, the Windows of the World restaurant, to the 47th floor, and I'll explain who he met with on the 47th floor, his invitation was to the people in the audience at the Risk Waters Congress, those who believe that the sponsor will be able to bring both towers down in the same day, follow me. Now, apparently, and I'm looking at the list, and I've just put it in the chat room, here is from the Risk Waters site, a statement about those events. While there can be no certainty, the company's best estimates are that 71 industry delegates also attended. After speaking to representatives, we believe that the following companies had delegates at the event, and then there's a list. And I'm just scanning through that list, and I see Accenture. Well, Accenture are the scumbags who have taken over the operation of Obamacare from CGI, the Montreal-based company, where the Navigator, which tracks the assets of American citizens through Obamacare, are our friend Serco. I see in that group we have Freddie Mac. We have JP Morgan Investor Services. We have Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. We have Reuters. And we have the Salomon Smith Barney team. And lo and behold, Salomon Smith Barney owned and operated building number 7. The mortgage on building number 7 was owned by the Blackstone Group, which doubled the insurance on the building a few weeks before it was demolished. And then we have a wonderful group called the Slam Dunk Networks. And this is going to amuse you, Field. We have Thales Contact Solutions. So when Chris Hyman invited some members of the audience in the Windows of the World to join him, as he went down that elevator with you, hypothetically, it may not have been possible for you to beat the living shit out of this man and prevent him getting to floor 47, because he was with a whole bunch of guys who decided that they wanted to put their money with the sponsor. And the sponsor could have had a number of cat bonds for the events of 9/11, including the sponsorship that there would be 343 firefighters killed in the demolition. And here's an amazing idea, Phil. In the Bullingdon Club antics, what would normally happen, you take a pub like the White Hart pub, and you would organize the Bullingdon Club members into 2 teams, the blue team and the red team, and you'd send them into the pub to vandalize the pub. And going in with them would be what is known as a loss adjuster, who would signal to the blue team and the red team when he or she considered enough damage had been done to trigger what we now call a sponsor bond, a catastrophe bond. So the red team would be responsible for working the damage up towards and past the point when the risk adjuster would say stop. And the blue team would be responsible for keeping the damage, the insured damage claim below that point. So the red team and the blue team would fight each other. The red team would fight to increase the damage up to and beyond the spot fixed claim, and the blue team would fight to keep it below. So you can see with a little bit of practice, these guys who go to Oxford University and study philosophy, politics, and economics, and they're basically a bunch of useless parasitical thugs, would learn how to shut off the damage at a fairly precise point when indicated they'd reached that point by the risk adjuster. So Chris Hyman goes down to the 47th floor with a group of delegates from the meeting up at the 106th floor, and he goes to the office of an outfit known as Adjusters International, which is a public group of adjusters that comes under the auspices of FEMA. And my suggestion is, Phil, that that group have the equivalent role to the risk adjuster that would go into the pub with a bag of money, and the red team and the blue team of Bullingdon Club members. And when he or she had decided that the Bullingdon Club had caused $10,000 or $5,000 of damage in the pub, he'd offer the proprietor $20,000 or $10,000, i.e. double the money of the damage, provided the proprietor of the restaurant kept his mouth shut. So what have you got here? You've got some interesting people compromised. You've got the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom compromised because doing a little reverse engineering of what he did since he left Oxford with his first-class degree in philosophy, politics and economics. He then went to work in Treasury. So from 1990 to 1993, he worked with Norman Lamont, the Rothschild banker, who was Chancellor, on developing, I believe, the framework for catastrophe bond asset tracking by the company called Serco, where, of course, they would need someone who understood enough about finance, not necessarily about engineering or explosives or crime, to put together these relatively complex structures so that the sponsor of a catastrophe bond could rip off Lloyd's names for billions of dollars and enrich themselves and operate from inside the supply chains controlled by, for example, the Honourable Company of Air Pilots. So when the Thales people went down from the 106th floor and joined, and this is a presumption, Chris Hyman, in his presentation at the offices of Adjusters International, given that Thales manufactures the triaxial flight box for the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, Thales would have been in an excellent position on the morning of 9/11 to engage in what is known as real-time catastrophe bond asset tracking. So as they arrived in that office, they would have been able to define the exact impact time of Flight 11 on the north face of the North Tower in full visibility of, I believe, the Millennium Hotel by the United Nations. So a brilliantly contrived catastrophe bond asset tracking fraud, which laid the groundwork for subsequent financed or self-funded attacks on the sovereign state, where these planes suddenly drop out of the skies or overshoot the runway or undershoot the runway or get vaporized or disappear into the side of a volcano, because in real time there is a group of people, and that has to be Serco because it's the world leading air traffic controller, there have to be people who can adjust the odds and the degree of damages to be claimed in the future so that it fits the criteria of a cat bond, and the sponsor takes the money of the investor, and the investor, which would probably be a big union pension fund, loses the money, but the underlying conspiracy is financed, and everyone in that loop is terrified into silence. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, I'm so terrified into science. I got my Eric Holder 1971 Delphonics hairdo on, so that if somebody from DHS or FEMA is told to take some of their 4 billion rounds and turn me into Swiss cheese, they won't shoot me because they can't see that I'm actually a person of this color from the back. All they can see is my Afro dude, and they think that I'm a person of some other color. Now, and this is the color I am, and I hear some voices. So, David, I'll turn it over to you while I see who the voices might be.
Okay.
No.
No? Okay.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, so well, it's 12:29. So just to wrap up about Serco and the Voice 370, I believe Field is the perfect insider for the various reasons we've covered in today's show for the Voice 370 people. That Able Danger is the only organization capable of conducting a cloud-centric crime scene investigation and whistleblowing service that is not tainted by corruption in the participating governments who are hiding the real destination of Flight 370. And so I don't say it's a slam dunk, but I do think we are entirely credible when Field comes out with his video in the simulator and he can simulate what he believes happened to Captain Zahari Shah's aircraft, and right through to the capability of a Cat 3C landing on Diego Garcia, policed by the British and Serco. And of course, when you think of what they have, the conspirators, by way of opposition, just have a look at the video of the simulation at UFly near Toronto's Gateway Sheraton Hotel, where you've got two clowns in the simulator cockpit, one by the name of Martin Savage, who's born of British parents in La Cheyenne, Quebec, and he's pontificating with the pilot instructor for that simulator, who's never flown a Boeing 777-200 and is an amateur pilot who's barely qualified to fly a Cessna. So out of that combination, in terms of accuracy, you get precisely zip, but that hasn't prevented them from generating a wag the dog story that is still dazzling the global sheeple and the Malaysian government. So over to you, Phil.
Yeah, I enjoyed my trip to Malaysia, and I was there 4 days, and I spoke with anybody who wanted to speak with me, and to re-mention, restate, recap who I was willing to speak to. I was willing to speak to any parties from Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, China, or Malaysia. And I did speak with probably 18 or 20 people. David Kaye, whoever David Kaye is, and I wonder if that's Kavanaugh, is the perfect insider. I'm not so sure that's not right, and I'll tell you why. It's not like something I want to be doing. It's something I was designed, not by myself, but by another power to do. But keep in mind that regardless of what Malaysia may say, or China, or Vietnam, or Singapore, or the UK, the US, or Australia, there's not another pilot in the world who's filed 3 federal lawsuits involving the illegal modification of Boeing aircraft. And before I sound like I'm being critical of Boeing, I am not. In fact, I think I would be the perfect witness for Boeing if Malaysia tries to go after Boeing. And I'm not suggesting that Malaysia will go after anyone. In fact, I'm not sure that Malaysia doesn't have more to lose than to gain. But that's for the Malaysians and the global legal people to discuss. What makes me perhaps a good witness for Boeing is the fact that I filed those lawsuits, and in response to my civil case 3:07-CV-24, 4 days later, Boeing announced they had the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. Well, that true history right there establishes me as an early warning system for the droning of aircraft. And from this point onward, and when I say this point onward, that point would have been the 27th of February of 2007, which was about 2 months after I blew the whistle to the government insiders. Those insiders including FBI, FAA, NTSB, ALPA, Northwest Airlines. By the way, Northwest Airlines responded appropriately initially. ALPA has never responded appropriately, and as much as you'd like to see Serco cease to exist, I join you in that, and I also would like to see ALPA cease to exist, because the Airline Pilots Association supposedly is a union that should be enhancing the safety of the United States aviation system. Nothing could be further from the truth. And the fraud upon the court in civil case 1:08-1600 parentheses RMC is huge. If anybody in Malaysia or that region wishes to get legal redress or remuneration, you're not, the road to the exposure of Malaysia 370 runs through Plum City. A statement?
No, I think it's absolutely true, and gives credence to the plum plunge. And it's just actually staggering that we've been blessed with arriving at this point in time with this opportunity. So over to you, Phil.
Yeah, well, I'm getting nice comments, and I'm not sure I'm worthy of any nice comments. And there's a lot of you who've met me, and you know why I say that. But I'll tell you, one of the flaws in my personality is persistence, and I, without sounding like I'm totally self-absorbed with my truthful history, I want to point out that I never should have been allowed into the Naval Academy. I didn't have what it takes to graduate. Somehow I got in, somehow I got out, somehow I was the last guy in my flying school group to be allowed to fly jet aircraft instead of choppers. And you know, the numbers don't lie and history doesn't lie. But when I got through the T-34, which is the basic trainer in the Navy in 72, my class had 24 Marine student pilots, and they had 6 slots for people going to jet training, and the other 18 people, regardless of what they wanted, were only 6 slots. But you had to have, if you were one of the top 6 performing pilots out of 24, which I shouldn't have been that either, but you also had to have a 3.02 grade average. And I think that most of you who've listened to our shows more than 3 times can tell from what I've told you which was. Yep, you're right. I was 6 out of 6, and I had a 3.02, which means that God was micromanaging my progress from 1944, which is 5 years before I was born, until this very minute. And that's why I can look right in the camera and say, I'm not afraid of anybody or anything. All I'm afraid of is falling short of executing my mission for which God has assigned me. David, I see the big red button in the 3, 2, 1. Do you want to have some closing comments?
No, I can't cap that field, and I believe we're what is it? Loaded, ready for bear.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we are too, but I think this victory's already been won. And that's why I'm putting a lot of energy into the Plum City Plunge. And here's evidence of that energy. Gift bags for Pat S. There's the gift bags. License plates, koozies, cocktail glasses. Oops, camera just moved. I've got all sorts of stuff we're going to give away. And most importantly, I hope we're able to give Karen and Billy Vaughn a much needed escape from reality. They're the nice couple from Florida who had their son murdered. And I wonder if Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Martin Dempsey, would ever like to come to Plum City, excuse me, I saw a Marine with his finger in my face.